Politics in America is a great exchange of ideas. That's what it should be about. Good morning, everyone, including the Democrats. I am the conservative small business owner in this race for governor. I've seen firsthand, as a business person, how devastating the practices of Jim Doyle have been over the last 8 years as it relates to taxes and spending. I know that in spite of these people here who love Tom Barrett, that spending has in fact gone up faster in the city of Milwaukee and Wisconsin just plain can't afford him to be our next governor. I'm in this race because I believe in lower taxes, less spending, smaller government, more personal responsibility, and I respect all these great people around me, but respectfully, they cannot afford Tom Barrett to be our next governor.
How can we afford to turn down the high-speed rail money that you're trying to put the kibosh on? That's
the high-speed rail money. High-speed rail money is a really good question, and I suspect we'll find people here on both sides of the aisle who would understand that the federal government does not have $810 million to spend. And if it did have $810 million to spend burning a hole in its pocket and they want to send it to Wisconsin, I think we should give it back to these people standing around me here in the form of tax cuts so that we can spur on our economy.
If you're running the government like a business, don't you want to make investments in the infrastructure?
As a business owner, I understand firsthand that lower taxes and less government spending lead to job growth and economic development, and that's what my run for governor is all about.
If it hadn't worked in Alabama or Mississippi, why would it work?
Talk about cutting the size of government. Where's your plan?
We actually have a plan laid out in detail on our website that demonstrates that we will reel in the growth rate of spending. We will in fact cut in real dollar terms 1% out of government for every year that I am in office.
Tom Barrett talked about jobs just to the convention here. What's the difference between his plan to bring jobs to the state and your plan?
My plan includes lower taxes and less government spending, letting people keep more of their own money. When we look at the city of Milwaukee, spending went up by 31% since Tom Barrett took office, even faster than it did under Jim Doyle, and we know firsthand how devastating the tax and spend policies of Jim Doyle have been to the state of Wisconsin.
Tom Barrett just characterized the Republicans as ideologues. How would you respond to that?
We do have ideas. Absolutely, we do have ideas. I believe in a smaller government, less spending, and I understand that when people keep more of their own money, they will either save it or spend it, either of which leads to job growth and economic development, something the state of Wisconsin needs desperately. I am the small business owner in this race. I get it. I get that smaller taxes. I get that smaller government leads to economic growth and development.
Barrett's proposed eliminating the Secretary of State and State Treasurer positions. What's your position on that?
Well, the thing about the Barrett proposal to reduce spending is he doesn't tell us how much he's going to increase spending in other parts of government. And based on his record in Milwaukee, where spending went up 31% over his 6 years in office, even faster than it did under Jim Doyle, I would assume that there's going to be spending increases. Although you've got to look at the big picture if you really want to control government spending and bring down taxes.
Specifically, what would you cut to cut spending?
I would ask for a 1% across the board, less than inflation from each department head. So ours would be across the board, and it would be implemented immediately.
Mark, you talked about balancing the state budget. How are you going to do that if you're cutting taxes? That's going to decrease revenue.
Actually, what we found when I was in Congress, and we actually balanced the federal budget, this was 12 years ago. When I was in Congress and we actually balanced the federal budget, we found that revenues increased dramatically because when people cut taxes, when people kept more of their own money, what actually happened is they either saved it or spent it, and that led to economic growth and development and additional revenues to the government. So the opposite of that is true.
Why do it here?
Why do it?
Control. Why you had the largest government ever.
One at a time, but I've got to say here, I respect these people around me. They're very nice. The question was why here and why now today? Well, heck, I know all of you guys and you're fair and balanced, so I thought somebody should bring the other side of the picture to you.
Tom Barrett in his speech said that this is substantive, that you guys are using empty rhetoric and don't have specific plans. Do you think there's a substance now?
Well, clearly we stand for smaller government, less government spending, and people keeping more of their own money in the form of tax cuts. And I think that's very substantive. In fact, it's absolutely what's necessary to turn the state of Wisconsin around and bring jobs back, get us in a competitive situation to bring jobs back to our state.
What are you going to do about turning education around?
Education, I'm glad you asked that question. I think education, after taxes and spending, is the most important issue facing the state of Wisconsin. I have an undergraduate degree in math education. I have a master's degree in supervision and instructional leadership, postgraduate work beyond that at Madison. I've been a public school teacher. I've taught in the UW system. I've taught at a private college. I sat on the Board of Regents, the Finance Committee on another private college. And I started our first inner-city Milwaukee school 7 years ago. We now have 4 inner-city schools dealing with the highest risk children in the United States of America, 3 in Milwaukee and 1 in Phoenix, Arizona.
Don't you get federal money for those schools?
If I could just finish. We've worked very, very hard. We have nearly 1,000 kids in our school system now. It's a 501c3. And our kids are growing academically faster than an average child across the United States of America, and we're doing it at a cost of about half of what the taxpayers are spending in the failed Milwaukee public schools. Education is extremely important, and as governor, I will be very focused on having the best educated kids in the world.
So aren't you getting federal stimulus money for those schools?
The Phoenix, Arizona government made a silly decision to plug a hole in their budget and fulfill a contract to us. Phoenix, Arizona schools had a contract with them, and it was fulfilled.
Mark, you continually refer to yourself as a small businessman, but is that really accurate given the size of the payrolls and the numbers of companies that you in fact own, and you're largely financing your own campaign?
We are a small business owner. I mean, I look at places like Harley, which we're certainly very concerned about as they talk about leaving our state. That's a large business. We actually have a series of small businesses that are involved in the home building and real estate industry. We're clearly a small business owner.
Do you support or oppose embryonic stem cell research at the University of Wisconsin?
The stem cell research discussion has changed dramatically in the last 8 to 10 years, and they found now that they do not need embryonic stem cells in order to perform the research that's being performed. So I'm very glad for that issue.
So
I would have the pro-life position on that, and I would oppose the embryonic. But again, I think it's very important. I am a very strong supporter of stem cell research that is being done today that is not using that. And actually, that question, I don't want to say it's obsolete, but it's almost obsolete as I understand the science of it.
Hey, what do you think about corporate money, the Supreme Court decision to equate corporate money with free speech in individuals and unlimited corporation spending on campaigns? What do you think of that?
I think they should shut down every outside source of information in this campaign except the candidates themselves standing right here in front of people like yourselves, debating back and forth between them. That's what I think. Now, whether that's not constitutional, so we obviously can't do that. But if Mark Neumann got to have what he wished, that's what would happen, sir.
Would you cut Medicare?
I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Will you return the stimulus money to for your own businesses?
Our businesses actually didn't take stimulus money. If you're referring to the tax cuts that were provided to people who bought homes from us, I just want you to know ahead of time I'm in favor of anything to cut taxes that lets people keep more of their own money instead of sending it to Washington, D.C., where it is squandered on a wide variety of things that we shouldn't be spending money on.
Like the war in
Will
Iraq.
you return Jim Foster's campaign contributions?
That's my favorite question of all. I have told Jim Clouser repeatedly that if Jim Clouser can show me that Scott Walker did not in fact increase spending faster than Jim Doyle over the same period of time, that I would return his contribution. Unfortunately, the facts are that Scott Walker did increase spending faster than Jim Doyle over virtually the same period of time.
Mayor Barrett says that there's a substance gap between him and the Republicans because he has these detailed plans on cutting and says you guys don't have that. How do you respond to that?
I'd invite Tom Barrett to our website where we've laid out a detailed plan to bring spending under control in the state of Wisconsin with across-the-board caps and spending limits and tax cuts to the state of Wisconsin that significantly reduce taxes so that people can keep more of their own money and our economy can become competitive to attract jobs again.
Barrett.
Hey, they've been pretty good, guys. They really have.
You talked in the past about reversing the tax cuts in the last budget that the Democrats put together. Would you want to do that in the first budget, or over how much time would you reduce?
The sooner the better is the answer to that question. And would we do it in our first budget? We would reverse as many of them as possible in the first budget. Tax cuts should be expected by the people in the state of Wisconsin in our first budget, yes. Good?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank seriously, you guys, the Barrett people.